Hello all, welcome to Freetree family. Today we're going to start with the very basic of Excel, which is sum. So what we will do is we'll start with the very basic sum usage and move with more and more complications, and we will move up until using Power Query to do the sum. Okay, so let's start with the basics first. So let's assume that we have a very basic Excel tab like this, where we have the sales and the volume. In this particular case, we are looking at the US city sales. So a very basic sum would work something like this, where you put is equal to sum this entire rows, and that's going to give you the sum, right? There's one more way to do it, where you put alt plus is equal to, that will give the formula directly with a shortcut, alt plus is equal to. So the very basic would be sum this entire cells, right? Now if you want to have just a few cities, for example, if you want to just have California and Washington, you can have a manual sum like this using this plus sign. But that's about it, the very basic formula, which I'm assuming that everybody knows. So there's a bit more complications to this. So let's start with the very first one. Let's assume that we have the sum done for all these sheets. This is the UK sales and this is the Australian sales. So now I want to have the compilation of the overall, right? So what I would do is, if without a format, I will have to is equal to this plus this plus this, right? So that's a tricky part. Now the thing is, if I have only one area, then it's easy to just link it once. But what if I have a whole bunch of areas? For example, if I have a sales here, a sales volume here, if I want to have this across two cells, how does this overall, and the format is also off wrong, so how do we do it? So we can have across the cells copying and pasting. For example, we can select multiple sheets, and whatever formatting we do across one will reflect in all the selected ones. So for example, if I select all three and give this a color, let's say green, and make this bold, and let's say I'll put this color because it's fancy, and call this total, right? Now if I just ungroup it and then go to all these individual sheets, all the sheets are done, right? So I could accomplish this sums individually without even putting these formulas one by one by selecting all this, clicking at one point, and alt equal to, and ungroup, and you can see it's all accomplished. That's the first shortcut I can say. Second thing, to do the overall, we use a similar method. We'll just copy the file and then call it overall. And then we delete this portion, and then we use this one as the sum of all the cells. So what happens is the format remains the same. Because it is linked to the cells, we can copy and paste here. That will give the sales volume. You notice we have not put the sales here, which is again easy to sort out. Select all three, copy this and paste it here. We have the sales volume here. Ungroup it and go here, your overall sales volume. It's a very simple way across the sheets, and I'm assuming that most of you already know that too. Alright, so now there is a third way of handling. For example, I don't want to give a defined range, but I want to have this portion to be summed, right? So what I can do is I can call this by a name and sum by a name. So what do I say when I call by a name? So instead of giving sum of C2 to C6, I can define this to be a sales volume and then sum the sales volume. That's more easy for people to comprehend, and that's more easy when you have a ton of sheets to handle. So let's do that once, just for the sake of it. I'm sure many of you already know this too, but I'm just repeating this again before we move into a bit more complex things. So you select the range where you want the name to be declared, and then go to data, or just go to name manager, and then new sales. I'll call it sales, and this is the range C2 to C6. Okay, close. So if I go here, sum, and then sales, you see the Excel gives me choice to select the names. So select sales. So that's a more intuitive way of summing. That will give the same result, but it is a bit more intuitive. This will come very handy when you have a ton of sheets, a large file to handle. Alright, so now let's move on to a bit more complicated. Let's assume that we are stationed in New York and there's somebody stationed in India and China. They have a separate Excel file, they update their sales there, and you probably communicate via server or through intranet. So now we have to just link these two files again using the same function, sum, nothing complicated, very simple, right? So I'm just going to replicate the same here by putting is equal to sum from here until here, this one and this one. So now all I want to do is Indian sales to come here. That is all I want, nothing complicated, right? So the way I do it, I'll just is equal to this, that links, and just copy and paste it. Oops, it's not working. Why? Because if you see here, there is a dollar sign here, so that means it'll, yeah, so I'll just remove that dollar sign for a minute and Control C, Control V, that'll push me. So ta-da, I'll link these two sheets, or did I? So let me do a bit more complicated. Let's assume that it's end of the day in US, you're updated, you're all happy, you close your file, go home. Meantime, back in India, someone is updating it. So let's assume we have one more, let's say Madurai. And let's assume that's 2022. The sum gets automatically updated because I've defined this as a table. So let's go to that portion a bit later because table is a bit more difficult concept. So the sum gets automatically updated. If you notice, for example, if I just add any new value, the sum range is automatically adjusted in a table. So let's look at how table work later on, but let's stick on to our agenda for now. So meanwhile in India, someone just added a new column. They just brought the cells a bit down, so they have the plans to add two more maybe tomorrow. So they have done these changes and they save it and they close it, right? So India's update is done. So now the next day, someone from UK or US opens the sheet again, and behold what the Excel says: update or don't update. Obviously I want the latest file, so I'll say update. But is this the sum? Let's check it. It's not. It shows this Madurai value is a sum, not this value. So this is clearly a mistake. So every day I'll have to go here, check if what is the latest value, and then link it once more. That's a very tedious process. I mean, this is easy for me to do it once, but imagine doing this for like hundreds of sheets. That's not feasible at all, right? All right. So now let's see a very different way of linking two sheets. There was something very similar or very baby step of Power Query. All right. So what we do is very simple. We go to data, we get the data, literally get the data from a file, from a workbook, and then we go to the place where there is a workbook. In my case, it is in downloads, new beginning, Excel, basics, example, India and China sales. And then this pops up the pop-up where I can choose which particular sheet I want. So this is the sheet I want. So I want this data to be imported, right? So all I do is I'll just click load. So what this brings for is the entire sheet to here. So if you can see here, this has been linked. The data source is given here, when it was refreshed, and what was the tab like, store name, sales, volume, sales, all these is given, right? If you don't want this connection, you can delete it later on. But right now I'm going to link it, so I'm just letting it here. So now, instead of directly linking it, if I go here and link it to the imported data, that is going to have a proper reflection. I'm going to link it here for now, right? And I'll call this from Indian sales sheet, right? So now let's say an intelligent guy from US comes, he does this, he links it, he gets the data from another sheet, puts it here, he links it across. So now he can see the data and it's linked already, as you can see from here. So he's happy, he closes the file, he goes home. So now the same thing, let's assume, happens. Someone from India comes along just to mess up and put a couple of more values. Let's say Madurai, Coimbatore, and let's say this is 140, and this some values. So the sum is 10139, right? So he comes, he does these changes, and then he saves it and goes back. So now the next day, someone from UK or US comes along and opens this file. Again, it will not be updated as usual. It will not, as you can see here, it is still not updated, and the same is here. So how do you accomplish this? Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. One, you can go on this table and right click and refresh. That's a way. Or if you have multiple links, there's a very easy way to accomplish this. Again, go to data and then refresh all. So you can refresh all the connections at one shot. So I'll just go refresh all. It will take a while to update this one. So as you can see, more columns are added, more values are added, the sum is done. So even the sum is done. I mean, had I linked directly, this would have not been accomplished. So even the sum is done. Now will this be reflected in the US sales sheet? Yes, it does. So this is a very useful way to link directly across different sheets. And this is going to be very useful if you have a ton of sheets. You just do it, if you just do it the linking once and forget it. You can have you can add more layers to it. For example, I'm just linking it to it. You can have more layers. For example, you can say at a discount, let's say 40% of this is from a sales of electronics. You can say this is Indian sales electronics, and you can split and have some from home appliances. I mean, you can add layers because it is linked between the sheets. You can have as much layers as you want and treat it just the same. let's say 60% is from home appliance, right? So this kind of split you can do any kind of manipulations you can. So I hope this was very useful for you, and I'm using this every day in my work. Thank you for watching the video. Do subscribe and hold on for more videos.